So yes, a lot of these old concepts as the Antichrist and the devil and evil, they have served us well for 2,000 years, but they are simply, as it were, the womb, the vessel for the birth of this whole human and this whole God concept, which is this paradox, and which is much more interesting than what we could call this somewhat of a naive concept of wholeness, where the good is completely separate from the bad.
Who defines good?
Exactly. The word says it. The good is not complete. It's one-sided. It's lopsided, and it's not sustainable. We know. We see it in the case of the church. No one can be good. Everybody has an evil aspect or a shadow aspect. No one can sustain that type of goodness.
The evil is the shadow?
The evil is the shadow of good. Yes.
But the shadow doesn't mean the shadow is evil.
No. The shadow is simply the opposite of good, or of bright, or of any pair of opposites. You see, then we don't. You see, we look towards a much more complex and more complete concept of, so be it evil or good or hot and cold, we look for the paradox, we look for the union of these two, which creates a higher concept, which is neither of those opposites. You see, this is very, very important, because we're at the verge of graduating to a new concept of deity, and together with the idea of God as only good came a God as a he, a man, a God as being up there, a God as being judgmental. All of that, a God as having a personality, which we know is just not what the ultimate concept of deity can be. And now we are taking our first steps to a more adult, a more mature concept of wholeness. You see, and it's very difficult, because many institutions are based on sustaining this polarity.
Can you call a few examples?
Well, what we are now realizing, for instance, in terms of politics, and in terms of the left and the right being actually two sides of the whole, and that a whole lot of the political agenda is based on keeping them separate. In the same way, we have many religious institutions that are still based on the separation of good and evil, the separation of a Christ and an Antichrist. You see? And it's still part of the daily bread of many religions. And of course, the nuance is that we needed that separation. So we need to be thankful to these institutions, which in a way have aided in the birth of this whole self. But there is a higher truth now to be opened that goes beyond good and evil. And there are many entrapments in understanding this. There are many possible errors that can be made in terms of understanding this union of opposites. And that's one of the reasons why it has been so difficult to completely hatch this out, understand it, propose it as a new model because those that fell prey to what we called the shadow possession, they, of course, they would frighten the hell out of the side that worships good. You see? And that's why we need to be very, very careful with this understanding. And I personally believe that one of the only ones that truly got this was Jung. And up to now, I think he hasn't been redeemed and understood. And so what is imminent is a union, a strategic alliance between Jungian psychology and Christianity and Buddhism, for instance, which is perhaps one of the most mature forms of religion on that we have, which also goes way beyond the paradigm of good versus evil, and also has a very mature God concept, which is not one loose, separate from us. You see, we are pieces of that source energy. You see, and I think when these three institutions merge, then we would have a new model on which to build. One that is no more interested in demonizing each other. One that is not what I call borderline, suffering from a borderline condition, which means that we either see only good in one side and only evil in the other, but that we can see the shades. You see, one that you can see. And then you cannot find peace with war. You can't. It's impossible to achieve peace through war. You see, and if enough of us awaken to that self, or what would be called that whole spirit, we would transform the planet, because we create what we believe. And if enough of us stop projecting the evil in the other, so if enough of us stop being that borderline personality, which can only see good and evil as separate, inevitably we will create a whole system.